Nobody ever noticed Lena Ashe walk into a room. That was not an accident of personality or a bad habit she had developed over time. It was simply the truth of her life inside the Silver Ridge Pack, a large, powerful community of people who lived by ancient rules, respected strong leaders, and, without any intention of cruelty, had collectively decided that Lena was background. She was the kind of woman people looked past, like a familiar piece of furniture that blends so completely into a room that you stop seeing it altogether. She was 24 years old, and she could not remember the last time someone had asked her how her day was going. She woke every morning before the sun did. That was her time. The quiet, dark hour before the pack stirred, before voices filled the corridors, and footsteps echoed across the stone floors of the main hall. She would wrap herself in a worn brown coat and walk out to the healing garden at the edge of the pack grounds, where she kept rows of carefully labeled plants, herbs, and root medicines that she had been growing and studying since she was 15. She knew which plant reduced fever, which root eased a broken bone's deep ache, which combination of crushed leaves could slow dangerous swelling in the body within minutes. She had tested, failed, studied, and tried again, hundreds of times, over nearly a decade. She was, in every practical sense, the most skilled healer in the entire pack. The pack physician did not know this. The pack elders did not know this. The Alpha King had never thought about it, because the Alpha King had never thought about Lena Ashe at all. King Calum Drace was not a bad man. He was simply a very large presence, a man whose attention was a powerful thing, and who gave it only to what he believed required it. He was 31, broad-shouldered, serious in the way that people become when they have carried heavy responsibilities for too long without rest. 3 years earlier, his mate had died during a territorial conflict at the northern border. He had not spoken of her since the funeral. He ruled the pack with clean authority, fair decisions, fast judgment, no wasted words. His son, Eli, was 7 years old, and was the only person on the territory who could make Calum smile without trying. Eli was a bright, restless child who did not enjoy sitting still. He had his father's dark hair and his mother's warm eyes, and he possessed a curiosity about the natural world that his royal escorts found exhausting. He asked questions about everything: why certain trees grew taller than others, whether deer remembered places they had visited, what the forest smelled like after rain. His escorts answered what they could and deflected what they could not, and on the afternoons, when their attention slipped, Eli would sometimes disappear into the forest trail at the pack's edge, which he had been told, quite firmly, not to do. It was a Tuesday in early autumn when everything changed. Lena was at the creek bed, 30 meters past the tree line, collecting a particular type of moss that grew only on the north-facing stones near the water. She came here every week. She had a small woven basket, a pair of worn leather gloves, and the comfortable silence of a person who had long since stopped expecting company. The light came through the canopy in thin, golden strips, and the air smelled of cold water and pine. She was at peace. Then she heard a sound that stopped her hands mid-motion. It was a boy's cry, short, sharp, and then cut off completely. The silence that followed was worse than the cry itself. Lena dropped her basket and moved toward the sound without deciding to. Her feet carried her before her mind had formed the thought. She pushed through a section of dense brush and found herself at the edge of a small ravine, a natural dip in the forest floor, about 3 meters deep, with a stone ledge halfway down. A boy was lying on that ledge, small, dark-haired. His left arm was bent at an angle that made Lena's stomach tighten immediately, but it was not the arm that frightened her. It was his face, the way it was swelling, rapidly and visibly, around his jaw and neck. A ruined wasp nest lay in pieces on the stone above him. She could see 3 stings on his forearm, already raised and angry red, and she could hear, even from where she stood, that his breathing was becoming a struggle. She recognized what was happening instantly. His body was reacting severely to the stings. His airway was beginning to close. She had perhaps 4 minutes before that became irreversible. There was no time to run for help. There was no time for fear. There was only now, and what she knew, and whether she was brave enough to use it. Lena climbed down into the ravine. She had a small leather pouch in the inner pocket of her coat. She always carried it, out of habit, the way some people carry a coin or a pen. Inside it were several small pressed compresses, each one prepared at home and sealed with wax cloth. A concentrated blend of natural compounds she had spent 2 years developing, modeled after emergency remedies she had read about in old healing texts. One of them was designed specifically for severe allergic reactions. She had never used it on a person before. She had tested it on animals with their consent to healing, studied its effect, refined it 4 times over, and believed, with everything she understood about medicine, that it would work. She pressed it firmly against the side of the boy's neck, where the blood moved closest to the surface. Then she stabilized his broken arm. She had no proper splint, so she used 2 flat pieces of bark from the ravine wall and the long sash from around her own coat, binding them carefully and firmly. She tilted his chin gently to help his airway stay open, and then she talked to him. She talked steadily, quietly, about the deer that visited the creek in the evenings. She described them by name. She had given them all names over the years, which she had never told anyone, because she assumed people would find it odd. She told him about the one she called Birch, who always arrived first and drank with enormous dignity, and the one she called Pepper, who was young and skittish, and once sneezed directly into the water, and then looked deeply embarrassed. She talked because the boy needed to stay conscious, and because she needed to stay calm, and because the sound of a voice, any voice, a soft one especially, had a way of telling a frightened body that it was not alone. After a few minutes, she felt him breathe more easily beneath her hand. The swelling had stopped spreading. His color was slowly returning. She exhaled for what felt like the first time in 10 minutes. The Royal Guard arrived 12 minutes later, alerted by the boy's absence from the grounds. They came crashing through the brush with torches and urgency, and they found the Alpha King's son lying on the forest floor, not on a cold ravine ledge, but at the top, where Lena had carefully helped him climb, with a coat tucked around his shoulders, a bark splint on his left arm, and a quiet young woman sitting beside him in the dirt, her hand resting gently near his, her voice still low and calm as she continued the story about Pepper the deer. The head guard asked her name. Lena Ash, she said simply. Mid-rank Omega, Pack Grounds, Sector 4. She retrieved her basket from where she had dropped it, picked up what moss had not spilled out, and walked home before Calum arrived at the scene. She did not wait to be thanked. It did not occur to her to wait. She had done what needed doing. The evening was getting cold, and she still had work to finish in the garden. Calum arrived to find his son awake, breathing, and asking about a deer named Pepper. The pack physician examined Eli within the hour and delivered his assessment with the careful composure of a man choosing his words very precisely. Without intervention within the first 4 minutes of the reaction, he said, the outcome would have been very different. The compound used on the boy's neck was not standard pack medicine. He had not seen it before, but he had tested it, and what he found was, he admitted quietly, beyond what he himself had ever developed. The arm splint was applied correctly despite the use of improvised materials. Every decision made in that ravine had been the right one. Calum sat with this for a long time in the silence of his study that night. Then he asked for the name again. He was given it, Lena Ash. He searched his own memory and found nothing. No face, no moment, no conversation. He pulled the pack registry and found her record. 9 years of quiet service. Detailed entries about the healing garden she maintained. A note that she assisted the pack physician on occasion when asked. No commendations. No formal recognition. No record of anyone asking her to do what she had done today, or knowing that she was capable of it. He closed the registry and went to find her himself. The pack noticed this. The Alpha King, walking across the common grounds at night toward Sector 4, alone, unannounced. By the next morning, people who had spent years looking past Lena Ash were quietly, urgently trying to remember what she looked like. She answered the door in her work clothes. There was dried creek mud on her boots. She looked at Calum standing in her doorway, this large, serious, powerful man who had never once acknowledged her existence, and her expression was neither nervous nor overwhelmed. It was simply present, the way a person looks when they have been quietly sure of themselves for a very long time and have no particular reason to perform otherwise. He thanked her. His voice was formal, because formality was the only language he had practiced for years. She received his thanks without shrinking from it, and without making it bigger than it was. She asked how Eli was doing. He told her. There was a pause between them, not an uncomfortable one, but a long one, the kind that happens when two people are both aware that something has shifted, and neither is yet sure what to do with that knowledge. He found, to his own surprise, that he did not want to leave. In the weeks that followed, something quiet and careful began. Calum started to see what he had never looked for. He noticed Lena in the healer's ward, working beside the physician without being asked, her hands certain and her instructions clear. He noticed her in the garden in the early mornings when he himself could not sleep, and went walking instead. He noticed the way other people in the pack, the ones at the edges, the quieter ones, would bring small problems to her, and she would solve them without making it a performance. Eli recovered fully within 2 weeks, and he asked for her. This was the part Calum had not expected. His son, who was cautious around new people, who had grown quieter since his mother's death, who regarded most adults with polite distance, this boy had asked, very specifically, to visit the woman who told him about the deer. So Calum brought him, and he stood to the side and watched his son spend an entire afternoon helping Lena label small clay pots in the garden, asking her an unbroken stream of questions that she answered every single one of, patiently and with complete honesty, as though no question was too small to deserve a real answer. Eli named one of the clay pots Calum because, he announced, it looked very serious. Lena pressed her lips together to keep from smiling. Calum, standing 3 meters away, felt something loosen in his chest that he had not realized was tight. One evening, a few weeks after that, Calum found himself sitting across from her in the healing garden as the sun went down. He had come to bring her something from the pack physician, supplies she had requested and been waiting on, and had stayed. He asked her, directly, why she had never made herself known, why no one in the pack, himself included, had been aware of what she could do. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something he was not prepared for. She told him that she had not been hiding. She had been here, in this garden, in these corridors, in the healer's ward, every single day, for 9 years. She said that people who are unseen are not unseen because they lack substance. They are unseen because those around them are not looking. She had never needed anyone to discover her in order to know her own worth. But she would not pretend, she said, that it had not been lonely. Calum did not defend himself against this. There was no defense that would have been honest. He had been the leader of this pack for 6 years, and he had not known the name of the most capable healer among them until the day she saved his son's life. That was not her failure. It was his. He said, "I am sorry," not as a formality, as a person who understood, specifically, what he was apologizing for. She looked at him for a moment, the kind of look that measures not what a person says, but what they mean underneath it. Then she nodded once. "Thank you for saying so," she said, and she meant that too. A month later, Calum stood before the full pack assembly and spoke Lena's name. He described, with precision and without embellishment, what she had done in that ravine. He described the compound she had developed, the years of quiet study behind it, the skills she had built without recognition or reward. He formally appointed her as the pack's head healer, a role that had been vacant for 11 years, and he did it not as a reward, but as a correction, as the right thing, done late, but done. Lena stood at the back of the room as he spoke, in the place she always stood. When he was finished, people turned to look at her, really look, many of them for the first time, and she met their eyes without nervousness, without anger, without the need to perform either humility or triumph. She simply stood there, herself, the way she had always been. What changed after that day was not Lena. She woke at the same hour. She walked to the same garden. She answered the same careful questions from anyone who brought them. What changed was the room around her, the eyes that finally turned toward what had always been there, the voices that finally asked, the hands that finally helped carry her supply baskets in from the cold. And what changed, slowly and without announcement, was the distance between her and Calum. It was not a sudden thing. It was the accumulation of many small things, conversations at the edge of the garden that lasted longer than they needed to, Eli running between them both with equal comfort, the way children do when they trust 2 people at once, Calum asking her opinion on pack health matters, and then following her advice. Lena noticing, without saying so, that he laughed more than she had expected, quietly, and rarely, but genuinely, him noticing, without saying so, that she was never more herself than when she was teaching someone something, her whole face alive with it. They did not rush toward each other. They moved like the seasons do, slowly, with purpose, without announcing themselves until they had already arrived. 3 months after the afternoon in the ravine, Lena was in the garden at dusk, Eli beside her, carefully writing plant names onto small clay labels with his tongue pressed between his teeth in concentration. Caleb arrived without knocking. There was no door to knock on out here, just the open air and the smell of evening, and he sat on the low stone wall at the garden's edge and watched them without interrupting. He watched his son learn the names of living things from a woman who treated every question as worth its full answer. He watched her hands move over the plants with the certainty of someone who had spent years becoming exactly who she was, in exactly this place, without anyone watching. He thought about all the mornings she had been here before the sun rose, working without applause, knowing things no one knew she knew, saving small lives, birds with broken wings, a pack child's dangerously high fever, a farmer's infected wound, with the same steady hands she had used that Tuesday to save the most important life in his world. He thought about how close it had come. Eli looked up and noticed his father sitting there. He waved with the hand holding the small clay label, nearly dropping it, and then said with perfect confidence, "She is going to teach me to make the medicine next year. When I am 8, I will be old enough." Caleb looked at Lena. Lena looked at her clay pots. She was, very quietly, smiling. Some people spend their whole lives trying to be seen. Lena Ashe spent hers simply being. And in the end, the right eyes found her, not because she changed, not because she asked, not because she performed, or pushed, or begged for space in a world that had already made its mind up about her. She was seen because she was there, fully, truly, and always. And one autumn afternoon in a quiet ravine, the world finally caught up.